Welcome back to yet another episode of Capturing the Intangibles, where this week we're joined by veteran principal business analyst who's been through it all, Lisa Cabral. She hops on to talk about negotiating between the imagination of product management and the brick wall realities of development execution, as well as her insights into the right ingredients for a successful analyst. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back.
Good.
How'd the holidays go?
Good, but I had tough holidays, Mike. I got tested COVID, positive for COVID, end of December, just before the Christmas. But now I'm negative and I feel much better. But it's there's been a little bit challenge, I would say. Not bad things, but a little bit fatigue, tired. But I'm glad I'm back, feeling much better.
Yeah,
good.
I'm honestly glad to have you back. For the podcast, for work, for everything, but also it's good to see that you've recovered.
Yeah, but I'm only back for the podcast, not for working.
Perfectly fine. I can start making all the decisions.
Good, really nice.
Starting with kicking off this week with Lisa Cabral. So it's actually a really exciting podcast this week, and if you listen to the one that we had done previously with Mandrew Ganamasti, who's our what is he now? He's actually SVP of development within the company, right? So really exciting time for Mandrew. But I think we have so many different people throughout the organization that play so many different roles in actually delivering products and software that we should probably create a playlist or a theme around these types of these interviews that we're doing. Something like, I don't know, the Software Factory. But this week we actually have Lisa Cabral from many of our products, our colleague for many, many years, and it's really exciting to have her here, and she's a principal business analyst. So, Lisa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, what you did, and how you arrived at what you're doing today in the company.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on as a guest. It's nice to see all of you again. How I became a business analyst. Well, I didn't plan on being in technology sort of at all. My education, I went to a liberal arts school. I graduated in economics. And then my first job out of school just happened to be in consulting, so technical consulting. So since then, done a variety of different roles, a lot with technology companies and others, just with regular companies in a technical capacity. So, I think that with a background of customer support and training and development and everything, business analyst is sort of a accumulation of all of those different roles into what I do now.
Oh, that's cool. So what were you doing before you actually became a business analyst?
I was a program manager. So as a program manager, I was working with different groups at Infor to release product. So it was working with development and customer support and services and, arranging beta tests and things like that. So all the things required to really launch a product from scratch, like launch a new product or, release a new product version.
Yeah, and the release management of a product, that's going to be a different podcast because that's a totally different category of complexity that, people may not see, from the outside when they get the software, but there is, an entire, process that we go through when releasing a software. So, but actually, it's a very diverse, skill set that you have, Lisa. So it's very, very interesting what you have done so far.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I know Massimo, but Rick, myself, we worked with so many different teams over the years. So we've worked with so many different business analysts over the years. So I think everyone has a somewhat different spin on it. But I'm kind of curious because a lot of people, when they think of business analyst, they think of it sort of like this is the title and the role that we give to someone with no, direct, their development, their product management, their QA, their this. It's a bit of a hybrid of, or a lot of people think of it's just a mishmash of all these different things. But I'm curious if you can actually kind of, wrap and put some boundaries around what do you identify and define, the role of a business analyst in a software company in a domain actually looks like from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting. It's actually a very timely question because I was just talking to a candidate last week, and he was sort of newer to the industry and newer to looking at different roles that you could have within a technology company. So he had originally come in and thought that maybe he would want to be a developer or, really wasn't sure. So we started talking about what a business analyst does and what, I do every day. And, it's a really nice mix because you're working with so many different groups in a lot of different capacities. So, my day is never the same. It's always made up of, working with the developers, working with product managers, working with customer support, answering questions from services. So you really do get a broad mix of the people that you're dealing with, which is great. And you're always solving problems, which is really the fun part of it. So you're always working with, the customer has this problem, or we're trying to troubleshoot this issue or something like that. So you sort of cover everything from the functional to the technical. So it's a nice bridge because you actually get exposure to a lot of different things. And you also get a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different people. So everybody in the organization, they know their role, they know what they need to do to be successful. And it's really, the business analyst's job to pave the way and to, ease the way into, making sure that people have what they want. The product is, going out, the product has quality, things like that. And really explaining what the product is, what it does, what it doesn't do through documentation and training and, working with support.
What I like of the business analyst, and it's also a very tough role, is that the business analyst is in between like a product management organization. And we had this meeting with Manju, product management versus development. But specifically, the product manager and the business analyst, they work very close, right? Because you get maybe a high-level use case or a high-level requirement, and then the business analyst has the challenge to take that into something that is generic and a little bit high level and needs to be translated into something tangible that an engineer is ready to code, right? And to architect and code. How do you find that challenge of translating something that's a little bit, high level into something the developer will say, hey, Lisa, I don't understand what I need to build, right? So can you describe a little bit that challenge?
Sure. Well, with product management, when requirements come in and you start looking at them and you start analyzing them, you have to go that second, third layer deeper to figure out exactly what you need. And a lot of times it's, what is the industry doing or what do our customers want? And then how do you translate that into something that actually works with the product? So, in going that second, third layer deep, I think it's a lot of research into what can be done. But of course, everything that you look at, maybe it has to be broken down into pieces. Or maybe, what you think that you want when you start looking at it from a technology perspective, you realize, well, maybe this isn't exactly what we need to do. Maybe we need to sort of tear this apart and rethink it sometimes. But also, you rely on the developers because they are going to be able to tell you, like, you can build this or we can build this in a timely fashion or we can't.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's where a lot of the negotiation takes place. And, that's a big part of, just developing a solution that's actually going to be stable and something that you can build on, as you release a product, what else do you need to add to it to make it that, high level, high quality product that people want to see.
And once the engineer builds, what you have specified more in detail, would you go back and when they build it and maybe they do a sprint demo or so they show the solution, would you kind of do the first QA or you work a little bit with QA, like checking on, hey, this is what we were asking. Now let's see what has been delivered, right?
Yeah.
Would you do that or you do more, will QA more do that?
I work really closely with our QA team. So, we're in contact every day. So, when you do the requirements and you hand something off to development, a lot of times there are things that you didn't consider. So, what kind of error messages do you want to see? Or what happens when I do this? And, what are the give and takes there of the way you want to see something work on an interchange between, the user and the system, things like that. So there are always those things. And usually when you're working with QA, they come back with, 100 test cases. And you're like, well, I didn't even think of those things. So, it's good.
Oh, that's
because,
good.
Yeah, because then you can, finish off the rough edges, so to speak, and, actually develop something that people are going to like to use, hopefully. And you're also documenting it. So as you go through.
Your favorite part.
Huh?
Your favorite part.
My favorite part. No.
Yeah.
So if the customer complains about documentation, it's about the BA, then the BA role, the BA that builds the documentation.
No, it's product management that gets yelled at.
Oh, okay. That's part of. So one other thing I've seen also, a lot of people became BA from QA. They had that career path. They came from QA. They start build product knowledge, and more product knowledge, and then the next career path will be a BA, and then from a BA you can even become a PM, right? So that could be one of the different career paths that people have. So and the feedback loop, like I design something, but then I QA it. That will have that that circle of testing and validating what's designed. So that will be really, really good.
Actually, my career sort of started in technology in consulting. So I was in front of the customers working with it. And then I spent a few years in different customer support roles, which I still think is one of the most useful roles, one of the most beneficial roles that you could ever have in a company, because you're hearing straight from customers every day, and they're not telling you how great your product is. They're telling you what problems they have with it or what they don't understand about it. And, that understanding is really what helps me, at least, develop something that I think people will like to use.
Yeah, I think that experience you have is really valuable. So valuable to, I had one time, I'm not going to name names, of course, but the thing is that we built a UI where, you have to remove 1,000 records, and literally you had to do one by one. Click, open, delete, click, open, delete. And I literally said, well, I said to the developer that built it, now you join the WebEx or, the virtual team meeting, and you will delete it for the customer. And then you will understand the pain that the customer will gonna go. He didn't do it, but I say, hey, what if you would do that, right? And then there is a realization, I did build something that it's really not good, and I need to improve the design, and I need to improve the QA. I expect that QA also would figure it out. Okay, this is not gonna work, right? So, but being in front of the customer, you mostly understand immediately, will this create a problem or not? That's really an invaluable experience. Absolutely.
Right.
So it's interesting because I think, Lisa, we've been working together for years, and I have a lot of appreciation for the talent and work that you do. And, amongst the best people I've ever worked with in a given role of what they're able to do.
Wow,
but that's interesting that you say that, because it sounds like one of the advantages, or I guess one of the intangibles, so to speak, is empathy, right? And in Massimo's case, he's taking this developer, and just like a dog that peed on the rug, he's holding the developer's face and saying, "Look what you did!
I didn't
Look
do
what
that.
you did!"
It was a metaphor,
right?
I'm a super nice guy.
But that's the difference, though, because he's actually had to show development. Okay, if you're not going to be able to imagine or understand or empathize,
exactly.
And I think empathize and empathy is the critical thing here. If you're not going to be able to empathize and imagine the problem, then I'm going to show it to you. And I think that's one of the differences in thinking about this a little deeper, is that, Lisa, given all of your exposure in all these various different roles and components, you've grown your capacity for empathy to think about this problem from so many different perspectives, right? So it helps from a problem solving perspective when you actually start to translate, okay, this is what a product manager has asked for. How do we start to then unfurl this into an actual business requirement and then start outlining this for development? Do you think that's a fair characterization? Do you think there's something to that, that concept of empathy being amongst, the stronger intangible sort of capabilities of what you do?
Well, thank you. Thanks for the compliment. Definitely. But it works for any role in the organization as well. I mean, when you hand off something to a developer, if you're going to hand off something to somebody and say, could you please work on this? They're going to tell you, one, is it possible? Two, is it practical? So, they are also looking at it from, this is what I might think that the customer wants. So, it's really just building that and, working together as a group with everybody. Not one person on the team has empathy. Everybody has to band together and create a solution, or else you're going to start getting disjointed products and things that just don't work together. Or, maybe you build something that is just, it's not good because people just aren't working together as a team. And at the end of the day, it's still a team, and it's still, one product or one product line that you're putting out. So
yeah, absolutely. And Rick is quiet today, but I do have a question for him. Rick, you have worked, now you taking a little bit newer role, but you've worked for years for product manager. What's your view on business analyst role? What you have worked with a lot of business analysts. So what's your perspective from a PM working with a business analyst?
Yeah, so I actually have a little bit of experience similar to Lisa. So I began my career in technology, also in program management, doing change management into an agile culture or an agile development methodology. So I've been through that, sort of transitioned to a BA role for a while before I got into product management, but certainly not to the degree that Lisa's been doing that. And I think one thing that Lisa's hitting on when she talks about the empathy, it has to do with a convergence or overlap in a lot of these roles. And that can cause a lot of opinions too. So like, let's say on the BA side, you have something that I would call it, you're more on the what works when it comes to requirements and design. PM tends to be more what I want from requirements and design. But that difference between those two worlds of want and works is becoming smaller and smaller, or it should, in my opinion. But that also creates a lot of overlapping opinions that also can, quite frankly, piss a lot of people off. What Lisa's hitting at is that empathy of understanding that those opinions should never be misconstrued. I mean, of course, there's exceptions to this rule, but the default response shouldn't be that it's about ownership, but rather it's about that I have passion in this area and I might have something to say in that area. So that empathy of that overlap that we have in our roles is something that's drastically needed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's interesting though. So, being in a BA role, right? I mean, you're in between so many different product and project functions as well. What happens when those things go wrong? Product management wants one thing, development expects another. They're saying that the requirements aren't clear. They disagree with what's been documented, or even, but at the end of the day, Lisa, you're in the middle of this more than anyone else because you're hearing it from every single side. So when things go wrong, either, at a feature function level or even at a product level, how do you actually navigate that? How do you make sense of it? And how do you actually drive it towards a resolution?
Good question. This is going to not sound like a great answer, but you really just have to put everybody in a room and talk about it and see what you can do. Because at the end of the day, you are only building one thing. So even if there is a conflict of interest and everybody has, what they think is the right way, I could present arguments for both sides, and I can have my own arguments for it. But at the end of the day, you're only building one thing. So, that's when you have to start looking at, well, what's really important? Is it the priority of when do we need to get this released? Is it the priority of how complex do we want to make this? Can we break it down? Can we introduce it in phases? Things like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you hope that people are coming with some type of passion and some type of opinion as far as what they want and what they want to see. That's all part of it. But, there's a lot of negotiation that goes along.
No, I feel like it's a good answer, though. I mean, I feel like you're thinking it's a wishy-washy answer, but I think that's a perfectly acceptable answer. And I think, Massimo, let's put in the flight request plans and let's all go meet up somewhere.
Exactly. When the pandemic is finished. Actually, I'm curious, Lisa. Lisa works on the data lake services. So, which technology do you like the most working with? I know that you work on querying engines, query languages.
Yeah.
What is the technology you love the most?
Mike is going to think this is funny. I really, I've been working with business intelligence for a long time.
Hmm.
And so it's all about data. It's all about what you do with the data and, the different ways that you can access it, the different things that you can do with it. And over the past, 10, 15 years, it's such an area of growth
Hmm.
before when you would talk, well, what do you want? So I want a few reports, whatever. Then, oh, I want a cube and I want a little dashboard and stuff like that. But now with the amount of data that's getting generated and the options as far as how you can store it and how you can retrieve it and what you could do with it, to me, that is just, it's so exciting and it's growing all the time. And what's neat is from the technology perspective, a lot of things that, were, this is the way they were done because this is the way that the technology could work, for whatever reasons, a lot of
Hmm.
those barriers are going away. And, there's still challenges. There will always be challenges, but the growth in the industry is just amazing. And so I think that, you are seeing a lot of new technology products out, a lot of new data products out. And so it's fun.
Are you missing the world of back then, on-premise, data warehouse, less data, of course? Are you missing that world, or you think like, oh, cloud, infinite scaling, infinite data, and, new type of technologies? I really love it.
I really love it. I think that, everybody knew back then, you can only have a data warehouse that was so big, or you can only have
Hmm.
a data warehouse that you could load every day, or however quickly you needed that data to be loaded. But now so many of those barriers are either going away or,
Hmm.
people are coming up with new requirements. Like, I'm not going to wait a day. I'm not going to wait a week. I'm willing to wait 15 minutes. As soon as I bring the data in, I want to see it out. So those things are new and exciting.
What's your favorite database technology? Let's name it: Aurora, Redshift, SQL Server. All of three or one of them? Which one do you love?
You're
Or
leaving
maybe
Right
so
someone
many
now,
I didn't name.
outs.
right now, I would say it's Athena because that's what I'm working with most.
Nice, nice. Mike is laughing. Why are you laughing, Mike?
No
It's like
comment.
a
We'll put it in the blooper
sports.
reel.
Which teams do you like more? It's the same it's the same questions, right? So there's so many people. They either like or hate SQL Server. They hate or like Redshift. It's this, and I was curious about if Lisa had an opinion about that or not, right? So
Put it this way, I like Athena, but I still go back to use my little SQL Server database when I need to.
okay,
Yes.
so you see
I,
the old days are still there.
It's interesting though because like back in the 80s, 90s, aughts, and now we're in the teens of the 21st century. A lot of these concepts are not necessarily old, and that was the old joke, 10, 15 years ago about cloud software, right? Like, oh,
Hmm.
right.
it's my on-prem in the cloud, and what is the cloud, and so on. And we had databases, we had data warehouses, we had a lot of pipelining things, but what we didn't have was the scale and infrastructure as a service. So are you seeing that, from my perspective, it seems more evolutionary. We're taking the same
Hmm.
things that we've been doing, the fundamentals, but we're
Right.
adding scale. And so it's less a revolution in the same way as like AI and machine learning might be these days. But do you find for things that you were doing 20 years ago in this space, researching and developing solutions, does a lot of that just you digging that old requirement out from the filing cabinet and being like, oh, this is valid again? Or is it a completely different space and a completely different job of what you're doing today than it was 20 years ago, even if the technologies are kind of the same?
The requirements are still the same. What has changed is the speed and the implementation behind everything. But as far as what people want, they still want to make sure that they are getting all their data, and now they have a lot more data. They still need to make sure that that data is right. They still want it presented in a way that they can understand and that it's easy to roll it out to a lot of people. So, whatever tools they're using to look at that data or manage that data, they want them to be understandable and by more people. So, you don't have just one or two people at the organization who are responsible for, here are our databases and you can't touch them. Now it's, okay, well, we have a lot of data and we have a lot of different ways that you can access it. And so figure out what, you need to do from the company perspective to make sure that everybody has what they need and has a lot more of it and has it in, a timely fashion. So I think those are some of the new things. But, as far as we want to get stuff out of the system, we have all these systems and they're all producing data or generating data and everybody wants to get at it in some capacity. That's still there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. In one of the podcasts, actually, I think it was the multi-cloud, Lisa, we talked about that, maybe you have all the generating apps in one cloud, could be AWS. But then all of a sudden the customer wants to do BI in Azure, right? Or in Google, they want to do AI. So now maybe they're going to be faced like I have all kind of copies. Do you see that as a problem, the copies, or is it okay to have those copies? What's your view on that? Or would you do BI and AI in AWS? Because still, all the generating apps are in AWS of the data, and I'll keep everything in AWS. So what would be your view on this matter?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research into it, not a lot at this point, but just like a company doesn't just use one system, they have multiple systems because this product is good at this or whatever reason. But so I don't think it's necessarily critical that people keep all their data in one spot. From a management perspective and from an administration perspective, it might be easier, but for practical reasons, maybe that just is impossible. So, sometimes you hear that people are moving the data so they can, put it all in the same place. But in other cases, well, maybe we'll just take part of the data, or maybe we can still access it even though it's not physically on, our servers or our cloud or something like that. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. And I also think that's where, your data quality, your data cleansing really becomes more important because every platform is going to store things differently.
Yeah, I know you're going to hate this question, and Mike, I think Mike as well. The apps guys always say, oh, as soon as the data leaves my application, it's going to be a security problem, right? Because it's out of my app, it's not under the security model of the app, and either it stays in AWS in a data lake or ends up to be in a data warehouse in Azure. So what's our take? What's your take on this? This security, a problem that the apps guys actually, frankly speaking, I was charging a bit of a joke, but as a joke, but it's actually true. As data leaves an application model, a security model, you may have security issues, right? So what's our view on that?
Mike, do you want to take that first, and then I'll follow up? Or
I knew you guys would hate this question.
No, it's actually, it's an interesting question for all of us actually, because on one hand, as an application owner, any one of us, Lisa, myself, Rick, even you, Massimo, we could either take the stance that says, you know what, I have security in my application, I have access control lists in my application. If you choose to take it out, that's your problem now, and that's not my problem, right? But I don't think that customers hate hearing that, and people that are implementing software hate hearing that. So we have to start thinking, and especially as a lot of this software becomes more vertically oriented and integrated, you can't just dismiss security as a non-federated concept, right? So you actually do have to think about, and especially from Lisa's perspective, like she doesn't just only have to think about security in data platforms. It's also what happens if that data moves out, because then you need to start talking about like lineage, governance, access controls, who saw what data when. So like Lisa's job does not stop at like the line where data actually leaves our platform. It's, auditing who did what, when did they do it, what did they see, are there, regulatory restrictions that you have to think about. So, from a customer perspective, I would be pissed if I heard someone say like, not my problem. Well, then I'm not going to buy your software. But
Exactly.
that's sort of, my first pass and sniff at sort of that question. It's an interesting one. But Lisa, I definitely think your job is all the harder for it too.
Well, I think that so many customers have this concept of, we've already defined security in this system. Why can't you take it in your system? And then we've already, so everybody has already defined security. Unfortunately, they have it in 20 different systems and there's no real easy way
Exactly.
to combine it all. So it's one of the challenges, especially when you're talking about data transformation. So, where are the data transformation rules that says who can access what and how? So,
and that's one of the things that, back on other podcasts when we talked about enterprise composition, the wiring of capabilities, one of the very important core service that you have to offer is a security, like a not only SSO manager, single sign-on, but also user management, roles management. Because then if the application use that service for roles management, then the data fabric, data lake can use the same service, and then it will reflect both, the same for both services, the same security model. That's one of the things that it's really tough to do, and but you need a platform really for doing that, and that's the same not only for data fabric where you store the data, you manipulate, transform, then downstream innovation, AI, reporting, BI, risk and compliance, and so on. They all have to work with the same security model. Absolutely. So, well, Rick, you are very silent. That worries us a little bit.
Hey, sometimes it's hard to get in a word with you, Massimo. No, I'm just kidding. One thing that you said earlier, Lisa, is the question was, has the requirements changed over the last 15 to 20 years? And I think what you kind of said is that the end result hasn't really changed. What customers want, now the requirements behind that want maybe, well, now that we have cloud, I want something in 15 minutes.
right.
But what's interesting about that, we kind of talked about some of the overlaps earlier, is I'm curious your perspective on how much that you might have to get into the commercial side too. Because when we start to talk about cloud technologies and how some things are expensive on-prem and how that applies to where now customers who may not completely understand the whole infrastructure of cloud on what's required for even data movement, right? We were talking about, do I move to Google if I want to run AI, but if I want to run BI in Azure or whatever it may be, there's an inherent cost to that. So what's your view on that? Do the designs get influenced by that at the BA level?
A bit. Another thing that you touched on is commercial. And I think that before, technology of the solutions that we were developing were driven by the customer, the back office. We need a data warehouse that allows us to do this type of reporting or get these types of dashboards. But now, everybody has technology. If you want to go from here 200 miles away, you can pull up 25 different maps within 10 seconds. And so we're getting spoiled, or we are spoiled, because we see how fast things can be done. And now people are like, well, why can't my technology be as fast as my phone? And, I think that is, it's a good thing in a way, but it's a very challenging thing because those products are very good at doing what they do, like very specifically. And a lot of times when you're working with something like a big data solution, they can do anything. So it's hard to sort of pick and choose, where you want the speed and how you want the speed.
Yeah, it almost causes that sort of snowball effect, I would call it, because users get so used to different types of even commercial grade technology. It's almost like, hey, I'm doing all this stuff on-prem. I should be able to expect the exact same thing in cloud.
Right.
For basically no cost, and it's not that simple, right? So,
Right.
It's very, especially in these newer technologies, it's very difficult from the BA perspective to figure out, well, how can I do this based on these requirements, but also get customers to pay for it? And that's where maybe some conflict exists between the PM and BA roles, right? But it's something that we have to continuously work through because even though some things might be available to do in multi-tenant cloud, it may not be able to do that in a cheap fashion. And I think that's one thing that's a misconception.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the old days, you would have a query. You would query, database, data warehouse, whatever you have. And then you maybe, make sure that you have a right data model, right indexes. But, more than you were done. In the clouds, it's a little bit different because, you want also a query that is very cheap, right? That doesn't consume resources because there is a cost associated with that. And you want actually to have some intelligence where actually you decide where you're running this query. Maybe Athena is a service that is, good to run this specific query. But maybe there are other technologies that, when you pass a query, you could say, well, this is not actually good for Athena because it's going to not perform very well and it's going to cost a lot of money. So I'll pass to a different technology, right? So what do you think about this type of, intelligent, routing and so on?
From a customer's perspective, I think that it's great because they don't have to worry, or you're hoping that they don't have to worry, because the solutions that we're working on developing is, if you write this type of query, this is the way it runs because we think that this is the most efficient way to run it. And as you develop more, the customer doesn't care. They just want it fast. They just want it efficient. So it gives us a lot more options behind the scenes as far as what we can do and what we can develop. So, it's all just competing requirements, really, as far as what type of data do people need? What type of format does it need to be in? Is it granular? Is it aggregated? Is it time sensitive or is it temporal? Whatever. So
absolutely.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So,
Sure.
You've all worked with business analysts. So, what is the frustrating part not frustrating part? What are the challenges that you see in, working with business analysts and, turning over these requirements that are, that you've done your research and know what the industry wants and know what customers want, and then you're turning them over?
I'll start. I only have one. I have a couple of, but one is really for me, is my passion, is UX, right? When I see a piece of, capabilities with the UX and the UX is not really good, looking good, it's not productive. I'm looking at the BA to say, why does this, solution look like this? Or why do I need to click so many times and so on, right? And I even want demo it. I'm like, I need to really like it, then it's going to be part of my demo flow. If I feel that something doesn't really look good or it's not designed very well, I actually would avoid it unless I have to do it because, it's really part of the core for that demo. But I will avoid it actually. So for me, the most frustration is when I see some UX not designed, really with a lot of attention of details.
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't Massimo yell at me on an earlier podcast about some bad UX designs for me as a PM before?
Document management.
I mean, come on, you got to pick and choose here, Massimo.
UX, it's my passion.
Yeah, what about you, Rick?
From my perspective, I haven't necessarily had too many bad experiences. I will say that it gets a little bit more dicey when it comes from development and PM and BA versus development, because I think those are two natural ends of the spectrum of what we're wanting to accomplish versus what is able to be done at the architectural level. So from my perspective, it's just back to those handling those strong opinions and being able to work together as a group from that. That's the most important thing. So I can't necessarily pinpoint because, again, I really think BA is a natural extension of PM and the reverse. I think it has to work that way.
But there is, we talked about in the PM podcast, where should the PM team, reside, in development, in marketing, or in sales? And we said that the best thing is to be in development, right? So if a PM gets into sales, just go and quit today. You don't want to be there. You're going to be selling solution. You're not going to be a product manager. You're going to be a salesperson, right? But a BA, we tried also one time, to have BAs with PMs. But I think it is a natural extension. But I think BA belongs into the core engineering, right? So it's very important to have that translation of a requirement into something that the developer can build it's better to have that under engineering and not under product management. I've seen that experiment. I didn't see that really working very well. But of course, on the collaboration, that will be very close, right? So that will be close with the PM, that's for sure.
Well, it depends on who you're doing that experiment with, but that one definitely did fail.
Yes, absolutely.
No, actually, you know what? Mine's going to be an extension. So now I regret asking Rick to go before me because mine's got the same answer as his. But it's not a problem with BAs. I think it's a finding what are the challenges. I mean, to go back to your original question, Lisa, it's what are the challenges in working with a BA? I think if you don't have a good working relationship where you can sympathize and empathize and see where someone's coming from, the other party, that's where you're just butting heads because product management's asking for one thing, BAs are delivering a requirement for something else, and you can't talk your way past the problem because you're both seeing it two different ways. So I've had it, both you and other BAs that I've worked with, Lisa, really, really successful because generally we see things the same way. UX might be slightly different. We may want to tweak things or do things a certain way or a workflow or pattern. But I've also had it with other business analysts where they were just completely off trying to solve for different problems that I was interested in or that we were setting up requirements for. And there's no success. There's no way to create a positive outcome from that situation. So I think it comes down to those sort of intangibles. It's that actual relationship and a good positive understanding of like how you guys are seeing something. And I think that's actually, what I see as the difference between a successful, BA and a PM relationship and one that's less so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
See, now I thought that the answer somewhere in there was going to be, I wish we could have more products sooner.
So let's reverse it, Lisa. What's your biggest issue or problem or otherwise with PM specifically? Mike. But
now I can hide. Let me hide.
A lot of times it is prioritization because there are all these things that you want to build in a product, but there's obviously a limited amount of development resources that you can have. So, I mean, that I would think is the biggest challenge, So, you hate to go back to somebody and say, okay, well, you want 3 things, so prioritize them. And by the way, we also have to do a couple of other things that are technical things that we have to do in the product. So whatever you decide as a priority, we have to tack on a couple of release cycles to it to get things done. And so, you're just looking at things like, okay, well, I've already come up with the requirements for this. When can I see it in a product? And it's like, well, not yet. So
I do have a couple of JIRAs I want to bring up right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But what do you do if a PM comes with some vague stuff that you say, I don't know what to do? You just push back and say, make sure I need this clarity from you. You're going to push back? Because I've seen PMs coming with vague stuff. And even myself, I said, even myself as a PM, I wouldn't understand this, what you're asking to the development team to build, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mike knows that
Good.
I've never questioned any of his requirements. No, usually
he was coming with some vague stuff, right?
No, Mike
happens.
will start off with some vague stuff and then he'll come back with like very detailed stuff. And you're like, okay. No.
Hey,
It's
before
all
we
good.
closing, I actually have a question for you. The painting you have behind, that's Italy, Lake Como?
I don't know where it is. I think it's somewhere in Europe.
It seems in Italy, in Lake Como.
Is it?
Just say yes.
It really looks like Lake Como, but you can tell me later. You just maybe read the small letters.
And there's
I will.
George Clooney back there too, I think, right?
It could be his villa on Lake Como.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's why I bought it. So
Oh, that's Italy.
Smart.
I so recognize it. That's Italy.
someday I will get there,
Anyways.
Massimo. Someday I will get there.
Nice, really nice. Lake Como is so nice, really nice. Okay, guys. Like the Dutch guys always say, the potatoes are boiling here. So it's almost 7:13 p.m. here. So I need to get some food. So
All right,
maybe
let's
some
call it a wrap.
closing thoughts.
I don't know, Rick. Any closing thoughts from you?
Lisa, I really appreciate you coming on and shedding some light on the BA skill set and things and how we work better as a team here. So it's much appreciated. I'm looking forward to our continued work together.
Thank you. Me too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
See you next time.
Thanks for checking out the episode, and please be sure to subscribe across our various channels and leave us feedback on our content or any topics you might be interested in. Until next time, stay focused, stay safe, stay happy. Cheers.